This is Dubai Eye 103.8.
Message us for free. Download the Dubai Eye 103.8 app now.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by Matt Little, Andy Murray's fitness coach here in Dubai. Matt, welcome to the studio and thanks for being with us.
Been listening to Dubai Eye down the years as I've visited Dubai, and to actually be sitting in the studios is fantastic.
I want to talk about the evolution of Andy Murray because I remember I've been following tennis pretty much my entire life, and when Andy first burst onto the scene, he was quite a willowy kind of build. He was not the physical specimen that he's become later on in his career. Talk to us about that kind of evolution of him, because you know, he has done an awful lot of work. I always get the feeling with Andy that he has wrung every last ounce of ability and physical capability out of his body to get to where he got to. And you talked a little earlier about the drive and determination. But how did those kind of attributes get developed for Andy?
Yeah, it's been a very, very long journey, and it's a really important message for anyone actually out there who's trying to achieve something physically in sport or fitness, whatever it may be. This is a long journey that we're all on, and we're continually on it. I'm on it now in my 40s, and Andy's on it in his 30s, and right back at the very beginning when we first all got together as a team around Andy when he was in his kind of late teens. That was kind of the start of a journey for us, and so the priority with the team at the time, I was working alongside Jez Green and myself, was to turn Andy into this kind of tennis-playing athlete, this physical beast that he needed to be to go to the next level. And that was born out of a desire that Andy himself had within himself, a desire to improve and to be competitive at the highest level. He needed to get physically stronger and fitter. So when it comes from the athlete, when it comes from them, and they're not being told to do it by someone else, you're always off to a winning start. You know, you don't have to convince them that what you're doing is in their benefit. They've already made that decision for themselves. So, yeah, we set about over the next kind of 5 years, really, it took to kind of build him up in his off-court training, doing lots of strength work, in the on-court training, doing lots of power work and things to start to turn him into this physical beast. And that needed to be supported by good level nutrition as well, so that he's kind of realizing those gains that he's trying to kind of work for in the gym as well. So he kind of dedicated himself to doing everything we asked, literally for many, many years, and still does. So the initial goal was to kind of build him up and get him kind of looking like the big, strong kind of men that are out there on the tour. But then the kind of this middle part of his career, kind of into his mid to late 20s, was more about being explosive, kind of maintaining those levels, but maintaining that speed and sharpness that he has. And now perhaps towards the kind of into his 30s and the latter stage of his career, it's about trying to keep him mobile, keep him loose, keep him stable, and keep him kind of feeling good enough to stay out on the court, because he has built up that fantastic base of fitness and strength and power. It's now about keeping him healthy and trying to keep him on the right road to being able to play at the highest level.
How do you manage, I suppose, the risk of pushing him too far? Because I'm sure with someone as driven as that, with someone who's got that much desire to continue to get better, there is a certain risk of overdoing it and then injuring oneself. And we've seen that a lot. I mean, a lot of tennis players pick up injuries inevitably towards the end of their career. But how do you kind of, from a week-to-week basis, make sure that, you know, let's make sure that he's in the best possible physical condition for each tournament? Yeah,
no, this is a physically brutal sport. It's one of the most brutal out there, I think, in terms of the demands. You know, the matches on the men's side can go for anything up to 5 hours in a Grand Slam, and you need to win 7 of those to win a Grand Slam. And so if you're being competitive in those biggest events, the demands on the body are huge. So you do need to prepare for that away from the court as well as on the court. And it's this very, very fine line that you tread and that you learn to try and kind of negotiate your way through, where you need to push yourself hard enough to be fit enough to compete at the highest level, but not tip the scales. And so down the years, we've used various different methods, from kind of using kind of scales of how hard Andy thinks the training is and asking questions, to actually now we're trying to use tools to measure the training that he's doing more on the court by wearing things like the GPS technology that you'll see a lot of the soccer players and rugby players wearing with the vests on. So they'll be kind of running around on the football pitch wearing those vests, which give you lots of information and interesting data about the amount of stress they're putting on their bodies. And so we as a team have been trying to use that information for the last few years now to kind of get quantitative information about how hard the physical sessions are and the tennis sessions are.
I saw, or at least Michael Phelps mentioned that he once went for 5 years straight without missing a day of training, which is superhuman, if you ask me. But I also noticed, I think when Andy won the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award a couple of years ago, he couldn't attend the ceremony because he was in one of his Florida training camps, and you know, we know how seriously he takes that. In terms of the lengths these guys go to, can you offer some insight onto just the absolute depths that they're willing to push themselves to kind of achieve what they need to be doing to beat the Djokovic's and Nadals of this world?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the level of commitment, I mean, it is just their life. It is just their life. Everything that they do, everything they think about, like I say, from waking up in the morning, is about how do I be the best I can be today. And that sounds like a cliche, but they genuinely live that mantra, all of these guys and girls that are trying to achieve greatness. And it's not just in tennis, in any sport, but I've been, like I say, lucky enough to witness Andy's journey. And yeah, from the minute he wakes up, he wants to know what's the best thing for me to do to prepare properly so that I can perform as well as I can and train as hard as I can on the court. So even that starts from kind of the night before, of what meal to have the night before, what time to go to bed, what time to switch the phone off and relax. And it's an entire lifestyle. It's not just when I get to the courts, I'm thinking about my performance. It's many hours before they've even thought about going to the courts, of how little decisions that they make on a daily basis can accumulate into a huge amount of momentum to becoming the best in the world. Like I say, it's this entire life. And anyone who's done any kind of physical training or trying to achieve any kind of physical goal knows that it is a 24-hour job. You know, when you're sleeping, that is part of, probably the biggest part of your recovery. So making sure you get quality sleep is hugely important. You know, the science is telling us now in terms of recovery and things. So every minute of the day is not wasted. You know, if you're actually resting, it's quality rest. You're trying to rest well. You're trying to rest like an elite athlete. So it's not even just the sessions that we might do in the gym where we're throwing weights around or throwing medicine balls, whatever it may be. Every minute of that day is accounted for and is trying to get the best and trying to squeeze every ounce of performance out of you. And actually the tennis playing part is quite a small part of that job now. I mean, Andy's training is literally, he'll be at the courts 2-3 hours before he even hits a ball, working with physios, working with me, and eating the right foods, drinking the right fluids, the right amount of fluids, all of those things. And then again, for another 2 or 3 hours after he's played, it's the same level of commitment. So he's literally spending 7-8 hours doing various different amounts of work. And actually only a very small percentage of that is out there hitting tennis balls. So it's huge.
Andy, he's got to world number one. He's won multiple Olympic gold medals. He's won multiple Grand Slams, 2 Wimbledon championships in an era which is, let's be honest, I think everyone would be in agreement, the greatest era for men's tennis that there's ever been in terms of the quality of the players at the top of the game. Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, 3 of the 5 greatest players who have ever lived. How much has that pushed Andy to kind of explore the limits of his possibilities? Do you think if he'd been playing in another era, he would have won more Grand Slams, or have those 3 actually made him better?
I mean, difficult to comment. Being a physical coach, it's the tennis guys will tell you some other information on that one. But I believe that Andy would answer that question. I'm lucky to have played against those guys and to have competed because it has made him step up. Motivationally, he's never switched off. He's always kind of pushing, and I believe that is probably because of the level of competition that's out there. That he is playing amongst these legends and competing with these legends. And these guys are stepping out on the court, all of them believing that they are the best and that they can be the best. And they can all beat each other on their given day. So you can't ever rest on your laurels when the competition is that high. If you're not improving, your opponents definitely will be. So you can't afford to stand still. You need to continue to push. So I think Andy's answer to that would be, yes, it's been great that I've been amongst those guys because they have forced me to be better and pushed me to be better.
The attributes of a top tennis player now. What would you say? What's the single most important thing for a modern top tennis player to be great at from a physical standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, all of them pretty much move like amazing athletes. The demands of the game now with the technology of the racket and the speed of the ball and the surfaces involved. If you don't move incredibly well, you're going to suffer. At the most elite level. So they all have to be incredible athletes. And that's where myself and people like me come in that we're trying to develop this tennis playing warrior and this physical athlete that's able to not only produce lots and lots of power, but able to do that for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. And so trying to look after that body and make sure it's in its best shape to perform with those and compete with those guys is hugely challenging. But I would say movement, the ability to move well is hugely important. But of course, there are so many other things that come into it in terms of their talent levels, their skill levels, and a huge aspect of it is how competitive they are. The competitive beast that lies behind these legends of sports, not just tennis, but of all sports. These guys and girls are. They'll fight you over a game of tiddlywinks. They're so competitive, and that's a huge part of their makeup that I believe also makes them great. I mean, I've sat through matches that Andy's won, which in some respects, you think this match is over hours ago, that you think he might lose, and he manages to claw his way back into a match. All of the greats do it. And turn it round in their favour, and it's been a privilege to watch. It's just amazing.
How has this year been? Because obviously you've helped Andy reach peak physical capabilities. This year has been a challenge. We know that the hip injury that he suffered has been a big challenge. To guide him through that, to obviously stay positive. I'm sure he's an extremely positive person, but there must have been some difficult moments in 2018.
Absolutely. It's been a forgettable year really in terms of the tennis side of things, and it's been very challenging in many, many ways. But for me, it actually has shown me what a champion Andy really is in terms of the way he's approached this injury, the problematic way that he's looked at it and tried to solve the issues that have come up as we've progressed and tried to kind of find different approaches to getting back onto the court. He's been as motivated and as dedicated as I've ever found him, frankly, and it's just been inspirational to watch. Even though he might not have got all of the results quite yet that he was hoping for, if anyone's going to find solutions to some difficult injuries, it's this guy, because his approach on a daily basis, as I've already talked about, is phenomenal and continues to be. Of all the times you'd expect people to have motivational lows and to be very uninspired and not particularly interested to go and push themselves hard, it might be when they've spent significant periods of time away from the sport that they love. But actually, he's on a mission to get better. He's on a mission to get stronger and fitter and get back competing with the guys that he's been competing with. And like I say, in terms of him inspiring me, just watching him this year, stay on it and keep working and keep motivated, when actually sometimes he might have 2 or 3 months where he's not allowed to play. That for someone who lives for tennis is incredibly tough to deal with. But no, he's been the model professional. And for any people out there who are injured and kind of, struggling with trying to get back to doing the sports that they love, taking a leaf out of these guys' books and watching what they do and how they operate is something that I'll take with me, moving forward. And I'm sure that he will get back to playing to the level that he wants, because he's just such a determined and professional guy. Some of the guys, and looking at outside of tennis, what Tiger's done in golf to get back from 4 back operations, a spinal fusion, and to win a tournament. I mean, Novak in tennis with the problems that he had with his elbow, to come back to hit the heights once again in 2018. Do those stories inspire Andy, or is he very much a self-driven individual? I think a bit of both. He does have that internal drive. If those stories weren't around, he'd still be pushing himself. But I think he does have one eye out there and looking at some other incredible athletes that have achieved incredible feats. You know, it gives you that hope that it's possible, that people have done it, and it can be done. And so, yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like I say, he's a very, very driven man, and continues to push himself and us as a team to keep finding solutions and getting better. But it is just amazing when you see Roger out of the game for so long and comes back and wins the Australian Open straight off the bat. You know, it's incredible effort, and Novak doing what he's doing now. The thing with these guys that I've observed is that the tennis is there. The tennis never leaves them. You know, their ability and their skill level, and they're so well drilled at the sport that it doesn't take them very long to get the tennis side back and their timing of the ball back. So the tennis is always there. So if they can get the physical aspect right, they can return to competing at the highest level pretty quickly. You know, even Andy this year, being injured, he's still taken out some of the biggest names in the world this year, which has just been amazing to see. You know, that he's still that fighter that walks out on the court, knows exactly where to hit the ball to make life difficult for his opponents, and fight until the end. And so that's very encouraging for us. We can see that it's still there. And if we can just get over those last few hurdles, it'll be great to see.
I mean, we don't have a crystal ball and we can't predict the future, but we as fans would love to see him back on the court. Are you hopeful that he'll play a relatively full schedule in 2019?
Definitely hopeful. Yeah. You know, with every day, Andy's starting to feel a bit better, and like I say, that he's working and trying to do everything he can to make sure that happens. So he and we will leave no stone unturned to make sure that 2019 looks very different to 2018.
This is Dubai Eye 103.8.
Message us for free. Download the Dubai Eye 103.8 app now.